What we're going to do now is take what you know about 45, 45, 90 triangles and 30, 60, 90 triangles and apply them to pictures. In the problems that I'm going to do today, I am going to give you answers with radicals. But when you are doing word problems, so if it's talking about dirt in a dump truck or the length of a garden, remember you're going to give me decimal answers and then make sure that you've got units on them. So if it says inches, you put inches. If it says centimeters, you put centimeters, those kinds of things. So the first example says the length of a diagonal of a square is 8 root 2. So the first thing you're going to do is draw what it says. So if we draw a square, we know it's in a square that all sides are equal, but it says that the length of the diagonal is 8 root 2. Now, we could use Pythagorean theorem to find this because we would know that this is x and that this is x, and then we could say x squared plus x squared equals 8 root 2 squared, and we could solve that way. But since we know it was a square, all of these were 90 degrees. So when I split it in half, I created a 45, 45 triangle. So that makes it a little bit easier if I pull that shape out. And now I could actually use my 45, 45, 90 to solve instead of Pythagorean theorem. So then we put the formula on the triangle, x, x, and this should be your x root 2 side. So if I solve for x, I would say x root 2 equals 8 root 2. To solve, I would have to divide by the square root of 2. So then it would cancel. And on this side, it would actually also cancel. So I would get that x would be 8. So now if I go back to my shape and plug it in, these sides would all be 8 units long. So one side of the square is 8 units. Okay, units because it doesn't tell me centimeters, inches, or anything like that. Good. Number 2, it says find the length of one side of an equilateral triangle. No, it doesn't. Sorry. It says the length of one side of an equilateral triangle is 11. Find the length of the altitude. So this time we're starting with an equilateral triangle. Again, there's another vocab word, equilateral, meaning all sides are the same. So here's our triangle, and we know that all 3 of these sides are the same. And we should know that in an equilateral triangle, if I take 180 and divide it by 3, that means each one of these would be 60 degrees. And it says that this is 11. Well, if that's 11, that means this side is 11, and I also know that this whole side is 11. But it says find the length of the altitude. Remember, altitude just means the height of the triangle. So if I draw the height of the triangle, notice what happens to that top angle. I split it into 2 separate pieces. So now I've created 2 30, 60, 90 triangles. So I'm just going to pull one of them out. Here's the 90. Up here at the top, this is where I split it in half, so that's our 30. And I still have 60 here. And I know that this side is 11. Well, now that I know it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle, I can go ahead and follow my steps. So step 1 is to put the formula on the triangle. So this side in a 30, 60, 90 is 2x. This side is x. This side is x root 3. So then remember we need to solve for x. So to do that, I have 2x equals 11. So then to solve, I would have to divide by 2. So I get that x equals 5.5. And again, remember, if it's a decimal that doesn't repeat, it's okay to use. So now I've got to go back and plug in. So we're going to substitute x back in. So this bottom one is just x, so this is going to be 5.5. This one up here is going to be 5.5 root 3. So which one is the altitude? Well, that's this one. So we would say the altitude is 5.5 root 3, and we're still working with units. So units. Good. All right. Next one. The next one goes back to a square. So again, we're going to draw our square. But this time it says that the perimeter of the square is 40 centimeters. Remember, perimeter means the distance around. So the distance around the square all the way is 40. Well, that means all 4 sides have to add up to 40. So I'm going to take 40 and divide it by 4 to get that each side should be 10 units, I guess. Oh, nope, this time we've got centimeters. So 40 centimeters long. So then this would be 10 centimeters, 10 centimeters, 10 centimeters, 10 centimeters. It says find the length of the diagonal. So again, I took those 90-degree angles and I split them in half. So I created a 45, 45, 90 triangle where I know that this is 10 and this is 10, and they want us to find this side. So again, I've got to put my formula on the triangle. Well, this one would be equal to x. This one would be equal to x. This side is x root 2. So if we solve for x, it doesn't get much easier than this. We already know that x equals 10. So then I need to substitute x back in. And they're wanting the diagonal. Well, the diagonal is equal to x root 2. So that's going to be 10 root 2. So we would say the diagonal is 10 root 2 centimeters. Good. Now again, I know these steps are kind of getting redundant, and a lot of you would have gone, oh, 10, 10, 10 root 2. That's perfect. Okay, as long as you kind of show me the picture and then you have this over here, I'm not going to make you show all these steps. I just need to show them in case there's still some people that don't understand. All right. So let's go down and look at example 4. Sorry, I got to fold the paper in half here. For example 4, it says find both x and y. Now what's important to notice about this is that they've marked the sides congruent. So if you don't recognize that, then there would be no way to solve this. But since these are marked equal, that means that this is 45 and a 45. So this is where it gets a little strange. But what I want you to do is maybe forget about this. And if you need to, you can draw another picture over here where we know that this is a 45, 45. And that we know that this side is 6, but it doesn't have any of the letters on it. So now we can go ahead and put our formula on the triangle. Now, if you don't want to get confused with the x and y that are over here, you can use a different letter. But since we're using a completely different triangle, we know this side should be x, this side should be x, this side should be x root 2. So now I can follow my steps and I can solve for x. And for the first time today, we're actually going to have to rationalize the denominator. So I've got x root 2 is supposed to equal 6. So when I try to divide by root 2, these cancel, leaving me with just x. But over here, I've got a square root in the denominator, which we said is illegal math. So I have to rationalize the denominator. So that means multiply. So I get 6 root 2. And then on the bottom, we should get root 4. Then 6 root 2, the square root of 4 is 2. And then if I divide, 6 divided by 2 is 3. And I still have the square root of 2. So this is 3 root 2. So now if I go back to this shape, I know that this side is 3 root 2. And I now know that this side is 3 root 2. So now you can go back and look at the big picture over here. I would know that in all actuality, this x is 3 root 2. And again, if they don't give them to us, this one's not exactly a word problem, units. And then y is also 3 root 2 units. Remember, they're just using these letters to label the sides they want you to find. I mean, they could very well have changed these to question marks, and it would do the same thing. Good. So let's flip it over on the back. So this is the same kind of example, but now they've given you a 30, 60, 90, and we know that because they told you that this was 30. So again, if the x and the y confuse you, redraw your own picture. You know this side is 6, and these two are the ones that we're looking for. So we're going to put the formula on the triangle like we always do. So this side is x root 3, the long leg. The short leg is x. The hypotenuse is 2x. So then in order to solve for x, I've got to set x root 3 equal to 6. So then I divide by the square root of 3. Cancels here, leaving me with just x. But I have to rationalize the denominator. So times root 3 over root 3. 6 times root 3 just comes out as 6 root 3. Root 3 times root 3 is root 9. The square root of 9 is 3. And then 6 does divide by 3 and gives me 2. So my x is 2 root 3. So now I've got to go back and plug it in. Substitute for x. So then I've got the short leg, this one, which is just x. So we know that that's going to be 2 root 3. And then I've got the hypotenuse, so this one, which is 2x. So that's 2 times x, which is 2 root 3. So that is 4 root 3. So now if I go back to the picture, the short leg should be 2 root 3. Well, here's the short leg. So my x value in this case is 2 root 3. And then my y value, that's the hypotenuse. So looking over here, my hypotenuse is 4 root 3. And again, we could put units. Again, these aren't exactly word problems, so it's okay. So example 6, we have 4 things that they're expecting us to find. We've got an x, a y, a z, and a w. Let me fold this again. So in this picture, you should notice that there's actually 2 triangles. I have a 45, 45 over here, and then I have a 30, 60, 90 over here. So if this is my 45, 45, see if I can kind of highlight it in pink for you. and then over here is my 30, 60, 90 on the right. Well, if you notice, the only information that they give us that we know that's not a variable is this 8. So that's where we're going to start. So I'm going to pull out that 45, 45, 90 triangle. So this one is 45, here's 90. We know that this is 8. So I'm going to solve this triangle first, and then I'll use these pieces to solve for this triangle. So we would put the formula on the triangle. So this is x, this is x, this is x root 2. So in order to solve for x, I would have to do x root 2 equals 8. So then we would divide by root 2, rationalize, so we've got x by itself, but here we have to multiply. So I have 8 root 2 over root 4, which is 8 root 2 over 2, which turns out to be 4 root 2. So both of these x values are 4 root 2. So I know that this side is 4 root 2, and I know that this side is 4 root 2. Well, if I go back up into the main picture, that means I know this piece, which is 4 root 2, but I also know this piece, which is 4 root 2. Well, that makes it pretty easy because now I can pull out that 30, 60, 90 triangle. So if I pull out the 30, 60, 90 triangle, I'm making it a little more drastic, but remember 30 is always going to be across from the short side. So this we know is labeled, this is 4 root 2. So now I can actually find z and w by solving the 30, 60, 90 triangle. So I know this side is x, this side is 2x, or the hypotenuse, and the long leg is x root 3. So to solve for x is pretty easy. I have x equals 4 root 2, plain and simple. So now, remember, I've got to plug it back in. So the hypotenuse is 2x. Well, that's 2 times whatever my x value is. Well, x is 4 root 2. So 2 times 4 gives me 8 root 2. So this side is 8 root 2. Then I've got the long leg, which is x root 3. Well, remember that means x, that means x times root 3. Well, x is 4 root 2. So here I end up getting 4 root 6. So if I go back up to the picture, this is w. So from here to here should be 4 root 6. And then this side, the hypotenuse, is 8 root 2, and that's z. So this should be 8 root 2. So now I could give them all the answers they wanted to know. X equals 4 root 2 units. Y equals 4 root 2 units. Z is 8 root 2 units. And W is 4 root 6 units.